All
Got it.
right, everybody, welcome to Are They Out There? We are going to be talking about UFOs tonight. Stuart McKenzie, who's going to be hosting with me all the time now, is here. And
Yep.
we want you to email us, send us questions, any stories you have. Let us know, though, if you send us a story, if we can use it on air. The email is are they out there, the number one at gmail.com. So, with that said,
Absolutely.
let's kind of get into this whole thing. And, Stuart, I got to ask you, man, what just happened in Vegas, right?
You know that, yeah, well, yeah, okay. There's a number of things that are happening right now out there. Did you actually see like the Air Force guy? You have the Air Force guy. You have like, a number of things like there is some stuff that is going on in this world. You know what I
Right,
mean?
like the
Especially,
whistleblower guy who you're talking
yeah,
about, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I know. But I'm telling you what, man, like there, there's so many things that are happening right now as far as discovery. Like, yeah, I mean, we had in 2000, what was it 2017? We had a number of people who are influential, like pretty important people in the government that admitted to having vehicles from other worlds that they've
right,
discovered. You know what I mean? And that's it. Well, but then you got to come back to the whole thing, because I'm always so skeptical. You know what I mean? Like you can never really trust one thing or the other. And as far as trust me, that's the one thing I would love to. I want to believe. I want to believe that there is a higher power. There's something more. Because I mean, it's a pretty sad universe out of the trillions of stars and galaxies and everything like that. If we're the only thing that's existing out
right.
there, you know what I
It's
mean?
kind of arrogant to think that too, I would think. You know what I
No,
mean?
it's a part, yeah, and that's another thing too, is like if you actually have the scope of the universe and all things we've ever been able to map. I mean, Earth is what, 4 billion, Sun's 9 billion. We have, I mean, like it would be extremely arrogant of us to think that there is nobody else out there, that is
Right.
capable of, like yeah, I want to, but then, like I've heard other people talk about, like let's say we found an ant hill in the middle of the Sahara Desert. It really doesn't, I mean, like there's nothing for us to really gain of looking at this ant hill. You know what I mean? But yet,
Right.
that could be, with the vastness of space and whatnot, I mean, there's other planets that are like Earth. They have water, they have all the attributes that Earth has. You know what I mean? Like they could just
Right.
bypass it. Like, we're an anthill, but there are people in the world that decide that ants are incredibly, like just amazing to study, and they want to look at the hierarchy and they find things fascinating about it. But yeah, I would love to think that I just want them to land on the front house lawn or White House
Right.
lawn. Is that too much to ask for? Is that too
Right.
much? Yeah. No.
You
But
know,
what
I
do you
got to
think?
look up what president it was. I think it was Roosevelt that supposedly had like this secret meeting with
Mhm.
aliens back in his day and
Oh,
made some
yeah.
kind of agreement. There's a story out there about that.
There's a couple actually. To tell you the truth, like there's a number of the presidents. Almost every president we've had for a number of presidencies have had encounters or at least had like a UFO experience. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, yeah, there's a couple of them that they're pretty fascinating stories when you actually get down to it. You know what I mean? I think there's Nixon, there's Reagan, there's Carter, Ford. I think who
Right.
else? Yeah, and they've all had like an encounter of some sort. Now, whether that is just kind of them trying to drip feed the information and make it so that when it actually does get leaked to the public, it's
Right.
just not as much of a shock. But yeah, no. And then like God, but did you ever hear about the one where I can't remember which president is, but essentially he was photographed in California, and then like with a couple hours he was photographed, I want to say in Vegas, and they have like an underground tunnel system, is what they're talking
That
about.
was Roosevelt.
Yeah. Okay, that was
That
Roosevelt. Okay.
Yeah, he was supposedly going to the dentist or something is what they said he was doing, but yes. Yeah, that
Yeah.
he was like in one place and all of a sudden he's at another place and like
But
part of
was
the
that
Secret
just kind of
Service
like
didn't know where he
sloppy?
was.
Was that just sloppy reporting? I mean, that's another thing too. Is like, what I mean? Like, okay, so I'll put it this way. Did you ever hear about like with Roswell, right? With Roswell, they had, the initial report where, hey, crash UFO saucer, but that was also during the Cold War. So whether that
Right.
was, them trying to do like, psyops on the Russians. But and then, they came out 24 hours later and they changed the story twice. And but then one of the ones they had this one dude who was a highly proficient, highly, intelligent military officer. They basically were like, he had to go in front of the press and say, I didn't know the difference between a UFO and a weather
Right.
balloon. You know what I mean? And you could just see him just
Yeah.
being like, ugh, you know what I mean? Like he looks in pain. But if you look at there's like, so somebody did, there's a photograph and they enlarged it, and the piece of paper that he's holding, if you actually go through and they basically use our alphabet and whatnot, and they have a certain number of words or letters that can fit in certain spaces. But it says like, bodies move to, and there's all these other things, but there's only a certain amount of words that could actually fit in these spots, and they were able to decode it, and they just gave you a list of it. But it came down to one of the sequences that could have been from that letter was bodies moved to this. Da, da, da. But yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Right.
Like,
Right. And,
yeah,
and
I
you
don't
know,
know.
I've got a computer in front of me and I pulled it up and it was like, supposedly the balloon was part of the top secret mogul program.
Yeah, yeah,
At
yeah.
what is what they said. And I know that the rancher in some of the friends there, I've been to Roswell 3 times, just
Oh,
for business going through there. Yeah.
how was that, by the way? What is that? What's that? What's the feeling like there?
So it's definitely a community that is built on tourists and UFOs, man.
Yeah.
It's they do have a small museum. They got a lot of like alien stuff, and of course, a lot about the crash and such like that. I mean, hell, their McDonald's looks like a UFO, dude, with a
Oh,
huge
that's,
alien, you know. And then
okay.
coming into town and going out, they have an alien in a spaceship saying, "Thanks for visiting Roswell," you
Thanks for,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah. So, just speaking though of having experiences and stuff, have you ever seen one yourself or had some kind of experience?
I remember actually I just sent you that video like not too long ago, but
Right.
I've been wanting to actually like, I've always thought about it. And I've seen things go across the sky, you know what I mean? Where I'm like, okay, like younger and then like, kind of like, well, that could be a satellite, which I always sit there and I'm like satellites, like they're only so big, you know what I mean? And it's very odd that you would like think that, a satellite, something that small, that high up could actually, leave such a trace. But I have seen like one of the coolest things I ever saw, as we were filming Gold Rush. It was season 11. We were in Oregon, and I saw this train of satellites, front to back, and they were evenly spaced, traveling across the sky. And dude, there was like 60 of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it was just this long choo-choo train that goes along the sky,
Right.
filled with satellites. But yeah, I mean, like nothing, like the one I showed you the other day, where like I was just pulled into my driveway, got out, and it was just like, so there was a crescent moon, and then right next to it was this odd, blinking blue, this little object that turned probably every color on the sun, from blue to pink to orange to red.
Right.
Like, but one of the weird things, I remember, like I sent it to you, and you thought that that little thing flying back and forth was, but it was almost as if the object, or what I was filming, almost as if somebody was pointing a laser and there was like a dead
Right.
spot. You know what I mean? If you had a laser and you hit a mirror and you were able to kind of direct the laser in certain ways, but that's the only thing I could really think of. You know what I mean? I put
Right.
a
And
blind spot
when
in
you
my camera.
explained that to me and I re-looked at it, I was like, yeah, man, you got a point on that. It gave
Yeah,
me a
yeah, I
whole
was just like,
different perspective.
whoa, okay. You know what I mean? But
So
yeah,
yeah, so myself, I've had two.
yeah, but no,
One when
remember,
I was
yeah, I remember you sent me that one where it was just like all of a sudden it was there and gone.
Oh no, no, that was my friend. That was
Oh,
a
was it? Oh,
retired chief warrant officer in California driving along
oh,
taking a photo of the vineyards. And then that thing
oh,
like blinked in.
yeah,
Yeah, that was
he just. Oh, I thought that was you. Okay, well, even
no,
better.
no, no, no. I This was 1980, man, and we of course we were down around the Bermuda Triangle, right? On
Oh,
patrol headed toward Cuba. And
really?
yeah, it was probably about 3 in the morning. This like bright orange light just came flying across, probably I'd probably say like maybe a couple hundred yards off the water or so. And like
Whoa,
it went past us and like hit the horizon like that and lit up like the day. And then it
really?
faded. And then about 4 seconds later, if that, two F-15s in full afterburner, man. just skimming
Shut
off the
up.
top of the water. And then like
That is
5 minutes later, we get a radio message going, you didn't see anything. Right. And we're
what?
like,
You've
yeah,
never shared this with me ever,
yeah,
dude.
dude.
Really?
The officer of the
Oh,
watch gathered all of us that were up, right? And
yeah.
said, you don't report this. You didn't see anything. This is just a normal patrol.
Oh
Right.
man. See,
And I
that's why
figured
I
now
talk.
at
Yeah.
it's 40 years later. I don't give a shit. I'm going to talk about it. When are they going to come knock on my door? Right.
Yeah, come on. Yeah. Well, you didn't have to sign any non-disclosure, so you're good. Yeah, the
Right.
NDAs. Yeah, but that just kind of and that's another thing too, is back in the day, if you would have said something, you'd have been off the loony bin. You know what I mean? But nowadays,
Exactly.
and that's what I'm saying. There's a shift of some sort happening, whether it's for like some government purpose that they're what I mean, like because back in the day, the whole kind of focus around it was they had the SR-71 and you had the B-2. You know what I mean? And it was them trying
Right.
to hide that. And there's even the talks of the Aurora. You know what I mean? That
Right.
supersonic plane. And so, like, but it makes no sense, like, why all of a sudden? Because then now they're actually starting to come out with two. Is I was just, oh man, I can't remember what podcast I was listening to. But essentially, the government is saying that they're the ones that disclosed the tick or the what is it the tic tac and
Yeah.
the other
From the
one, like they're
Navy.
the ones that are saying, yeah, they're the gimbal. Yeah, they're the ones that basically like
Right.
they're saying that they released it on their own accord, but in actuality, like what I'm hearing is that they didn't. You know what I mean? And then
Right.
they got kind of forced into it.
Well, I think the one guy that forced him, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head, is he was in charge of a project
ASAP.
for for the government, and then
Yeah.
he finally like I think he had some kind of like NDA or something because he waited like 4 years, and now the Las Vegas reporter that worked on like all kinds of stories, and he was the one that
Oh yeah, Richard. What's his name? Yeah, he
I,
did like with Bob
but
Lazar, right? I know what you're
yeah, he
talking
did
about.
the big story on Bob Lazar, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so they've been working together too on stuff. And he's the one that pressured him to bring out those videos because he went and met with one of the pilots and one of the radar guy who
yeah,
actually had that. And then the female pilot talked, but the other pilot
mhm.
wouldn't talk. And the
Yep.
female pilot was actually the first one, and she got recalled to the ship.
Really?
Um, yeah. So when she was first out there, she's the first one that spotted the Tic Tac,
Yeah.
and they recalled her and sent out 2 other flights to intercept
Huh.
it. Yeah, kind of
Hmm.
interesting that they recalled the first pilots,
Yeah,
right,
yeah. I guess
and bring
someone who
them
wasn't
back,
read in. Someone who wasn't read in. But
right?
yeah. Oh no, so there's a whole bunch of weird, crazy things that are kind of going on about that. Like yeah, they're just so yeah, actually, what's his name? Stephen Greer. You ever heard of Dr. Stephen Greer?
Yeah.
Like
Mm-hmm.
he came out that one that one documentary. It's like Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And
Right.
he basically his whole montage is that it's basically like extraterrestrials, they're able to travel because of their higher consciousness. You know what I mean? So he goes on with the whole, there's multi dimensions that are stacked on top of each other, and that space
Right.
is living. So it's that whole thing like where if you have a laser, and then like you essentially point a laser at a cube or a diamond, and it splits off into 8 different spots. All of those spots are coexisting at once, and that's made out of carbon. We're made out of carbon, so theoretically
Right.
speaking, if you break it down to the physics of it, I mean, like we can do that as well.
Right. Well, it's funny you say that because I've been thinking about because you and I talked about this a little while back about this guy. But
Yeah.
then after talking to George, who I'm going to throw a little bone out there again, who's going to be our
Yeah.
guest in a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
With we basically broke it down to the neuroscience of spirituality, but is what Greer's talking about, is that happening to George? You know what I
Yeah, no,
mean?
no, George. And no, here's one thing that I've known George for a long time. You know what I mean? And he's always kind of there's always been something different about him. But yeah, no, he has a whole different. entity, and he's like kind of slowly but surely. I remember the first time that I guess people would say he popped his top. You know what I mean? I'm like, I just lost my best friend. I was like, my best friend is just gone. You know what I
Right.
mean? And but he's came back, and he's kind of tried to make sense of everything. You know what I mean? Because here's another thing too, is like he's not a dumb guy. He's not a dumb guy.
Right.
And he's extremely different in many aspects, but I mean he's there. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
especially he's a yeah, good.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, and you're right about that because he kept telling me, he goes, you can either think that I'm crazy, psychotic, schizophrenic, or whatever, but he goes, but this is truly happening to me. And for somebody to be able to say that to somebody they don't know, because I mean, it was the first time I talked to
Yeah.
him, makes me think maybe he's not crazy,
Yeah.
type
Well, there's
thing.
several. Yeah. Well, there's several things that he's like talked about. I remember, and I'm like, oh, okay. But even still, like, but at a later date, like something came out. Like, there's a scroll that just came out that predates the Bible by 1,000 years, and it actually had some stuff he was talking about, but it was he had talked about it prior to the date of its release, or of
Right.
its like publication to the public. And so yeah, and then there's all sorts of weird stuff that like he's told me about, as far as like there was like something that was like a dam breaking, right? And then there's like they had like a war with China, and then there was a mushroom cloud like in a major city. You know what I mean? And that's all things like aren't really too
Right.
far
And,
off
and,
in the
and then in the
future.
Ukraine, the dam gets hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
No, that's yeah, yeah. A massive dam
So,
just broke. A
right.
war
So,
with China. Yeah.
yeah. So we'll get back to the subject of UFOs, but a
Yeah. Yeah.
phone out,
Yeah.
everybody. We're going to have this guy on in a couple weeks, and I think it's going to be very, very, very interesting
Oh,
podcast. And I've got a feeling we're going to go really long on that podcast.
oh no, and we need to, we need to. And what's even crazier is the fact that like there's no pauses. It's not like he's sitting there making it up as he goes. Like we're gonna be able to talk to him for a solid 3 hours, and it's gonna be a nonstop where he's just talking. You know what I mean? And
Right.
he's able to dictate, and you can fact check everything. You can go back, you can look at these dates, you can look at these times, you can look at like different civilizations and what they said and what predates a lot of things where like technology before we figured it out now as of late because we're able to like it's kind of like that one what is it, the Betty Hill, like the couple
Yeah.
that was abducted, and
Yep.
they were able to explain a constellation or a star system that nobody really knew about, you know what I
Right.
mean,
And I
but she
think
was able.
it was Betty and Barney. I think I can't
Yep,
remember their
Betty
last
Barney Hill.
names,
Yeah,
but yeah.
Betty and Barney Hill.
Yep.
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 Yeah, no,
So,
I'm excited for it. But yeah, so but back
right. So
to
here I'm gonna throw
opportunity.
something else out at you that I've never
Yeah,
told you. Okay.
yeah,
My father passed away 20 years ago, right? He was
yeah,
in the Air Force, and he always told me that he worked in the blockhouse, and yeah, nothing super secret about his work, right? He command
yeah,
post was basically what it was called. And
yeah,
I remember watching him go to Nam and to the Philippines, like leaving
mhm,
from the airport, especially at McGuire Air Force Base. And he was in
yeah.
a black suit, a white shirt, and a black tie.
Oh
Okay.
wow.
Okay. Now,
Yeah,
now it gets better though. This is going to get really good. As a military person, you know that as you go through your service, when you get out, you get your DD 214, right?
yeah.
So when my father passed away, he did like 23 years in the service. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I don't look at his DD 214 overnight. I just know I have a copy of it. I take it to the funeral home. They call me up and
Yeah,
go, well, your dad doesn't qualify for a military funeral. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? He's a 23-year veteran. Of course and he's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
did you not read this DD 214? I go, what do you mean? He goes, he was only in for 3 months. And I'm like, what? So I go down and
No.
I get it and I'm looking at it and I'm like, the dates on it are in the 70s, right? My dad joined in the
Yeah,
60s.
yeah,
So as I start going through his stuff, I start finding all these DD 214s. Every time he traveled, right?
yeah,
They put him out, gave him a DD 214. When he got to his duty station, they re-enlisted him.
yeah,
And so and then I remember that he would always write my mom or call and say he needs new white shirts or whatever, right? He never went in
yeah.
uniform. That was the kicker. The only time he traveled in uniform is when we went to Germany as a family, right?
Yeah.
So his top secret clearance was a TOMAL, which is
Yeah.
one letter more than your normal top secret clearance, right?
Yeah.
So when I looked up a TOMAL back 20 years ago, a TOMAL on the internet and everything was dealt with the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty and UFOs. Now, my dad didn't know shit about the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, right? So I got
Yeah.
a hold of Stanton Friedman, who's passed now, and I was talking to him, and I gave him the information, and dude, he shut me down. He
Really?
shut me down. Yeah, he was like, nope, 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 nope. Didn't want to talk about it. Did not want to talk about it, right?
Weird.
So my our family's friend, and he just passed 2 years ago. He came out for my dad's funeral, and he worked with my dad. And I asked him, I said, "You need to tell me, man." I said, "What's a
Yeah.
TOMAL?" And he goes, "Can't tell you." I go, "What did you and dad do for work?" He goes, "Can't tell you." And so I look at him and I go, "What about UFOs?" And he stopped, and he was a black Southern gentleman, and he looked at me. He said, "Now, Gary," he said, "I'm going to tell you one thing." He goes, "They's real, and don't ever ask me about it again." And till the day he died, man, wouldn't talk to me about it again. Wouldn't talk to me
Well,
about
here's one
my
thing. So
dad's clearance, anything.
I've talked, like I've heard from multiple people, you know what I mean? As far as that, like they basically like, under the guise of like, we will not only like if you do it on your deathbed, like we'll go after your children, we'll go after your grandchildren, we'll do like, you know what
Right?
I mean? Because that does, man, like you said, that makes no sense. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if you're on your deathbed, you got cancer, like, you know what I mean? Like, why would you not want to give the world that information? Or, you know what I mean? Or at least something. But
Right.
you know, especially I think it's kind of crazy, especially the fact that they just like, passed a law for like whistleblowers. And that whistleblower program is solely based on the fact for black site projects. You know what I
Right.
mean? And they're making it so that if they disclose it, their NDAs, if they violate them under the purpose of truth, they won't lose their benefits, their pensions, anything like that.
Right.
But so that one guy who just came out and said that that we have you know he was 14 years. He was intelligence, and
Right.
essentially he said that we are in possession of many UFOs. He kind of like
Right.
circumvented a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? There was not like a, I remember somebody was saying, I think, who was it? I think it was a Joe Rogan or somebody was saying like, basically like, we should get him on the show because Joe Rogan's like, he would be like, how many did you touch? You personally,
Right.
how many
Right.
did you see? Not the people you talk to, but you know what I mean? And
Right.
I just, you know what I mean? Because that's what I want. I want the definitive proof. Because here's one of the things that like they talk about like that we couldn't handle. I honestly believe we could. I really do as a nation, or even as a society. I think it would actually bring everyone closer. I think it would
Right.
bring everybody. It would be like that unison of just like, oh, like because the military, what they could do is like they could theoretically speaking, like use it, because we always watch. There's always got to be an enemy. There's always got to be a cat and mouse. So like when Obama was in the administration, like we had ISIS, right? And then like Trump came into office and he was like decimate this, and within
Right.
a year, no more ISIS. You know what I mean? Like we're
Right.
talking, yeah, we're talking like no more ISIS, no more anything. And so, you know what I mean? Like I almost one of the things that I'm like really like kind of like worried about is that if they would use it as a thing to be like, oh, they're trying to, like UFOs are going to attack, UFOs are going to do this, and it's just kind of like, like they always kind of throw something out and like pull at the heartstrings of something. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like this last one was Ukraine, and everybody was just kind of like, you just gave us 20 years of war, we don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
that's just kind of that's the only thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny too. Like you hear all these things, the whistleblower, and then it kind of goes quiet or whatever. Like they were talking at least a month ago about quote the Pentagon says there's a mothership
Yeah.
in
What?
orbit, right? And then there was a lot of talk about the mothership.
I
Did
didn't.
you
I
not?
missed that one. What?
Oh,
No,
you
I missed.
missed
I
that one. Oh
missed
yeah,
that
dude, it was like all over the UFO websites and stuff. And supposedly the Pentagon
one.
come out and the mothership, and everybody was, and then they started talking about like the Apollo 11 mission.
Oh.
There's I think it's like 14 minutes where both Armstrong and Aldrin
And
switched
yeah,
over to the
yeah,
medical channel.
the medical channel, and they were basically like, yeah, and they have a whole thing. But then they had, and there's like a radio frequency of people like that picked up that 14
Right, on
minutes.
ham, basically ham
Yep.
radio, but they were talking about, yes, we see the ship,
Yes, we.
supposedly. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
haven't heard the
yeah,
recording, so I can't say it's real or not. But
yeah.
the
Mm,
whole the I'll
well,
call it the conspiracy of the moon with
yeah,
more than Apollo 17, there was at least 18, 19, and 20, they say,
yeah,
going
yeah,
back to
yeah.
the moon because they think there's a UFO base there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, then also they have like the whole thing like there's two brothers. I want to say they're from Italy, and they used to design and make their own radio equipment,
Mm-hmm.
and they did a whole bunch of stuff where they would like uh, get transmissions from the Russians, like Russian space program, from our space program, from multiple different things that were sent up. And yeah, they have a ton of recordings, but yeah, they have a lot of like stuff like that where they're like, what is like that's a little odd, you know what I mean, or that's a little strange.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think that it's incredibly strange or weird that the that Buzz and Neil would would switch over to the medical, and then I mean, but again,
Right.
it makes for the perfect conspiracy, you know what I mean, where they
It-
just happen to figure, you know what I mean, like
right.
oh, we got it
Right.
on the radio, like that, because human beings, like we want to, and anytime there's a gap of something we want to implement, even if you go back to ancient Greece, we're like, we saw lightning, we're like, well, that must be a guy who's really angry, and he's mad at other gods, and that's where lightning. Or when winter comes, it's because like Hades took was Aphrodite's daughter, and took her down to the underworld, and so during that time, like she's really sad, and that's why nothing grows. You know what I mean? Like they had to
Right.
explain things, and
No,
then
no.
just
Well,
as
then
humans,
he was
yeah.
really pissed at Utah this year because, man, we could not get out of the snow here, brother.
No, no, not at all. Yeah, dude, and yeah, like ours actually wasn't too bad up here, but yeah, no, but I going back to you were talking about earlier, you're like, have I had any experiences? You know what I mean? Like nothing. Like every time that I was driving up like long stretches of highway, like going up to the Yukon, or what I mean, in the Arctic Circle, trust me, I was always looking. There's this one famous UFO incident, and the ship came down and it was like the size of a football field, like so 100 by 50. And what happened was it was the what is it the Alaskan Highway? No, gosh darn, I should know this. There's a major highway system that goes up, but anyway, it goes next to. I mean, it's windy, it's crazy, and it's out in the middle of goddamn nowhere. But anyway, this ship came down and it hovered above the river, and it was slowing down anyway for 45 minutes. It just like at a crawl, and people were in their cars like pacing it, you know what I mean, like, and it was just
Right.
crawling as if like basically you had carburetor problems, you know what I mean, and it was just like okay, okay, and then all of a sudden kind of got back together. They said it sputtered and up as fast as it could
Right.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't have a lot more happen up there while you were mining.
Hold on, I think gosh darn it, there we go. We're good. You got me.
Can you hear me?
No, no, my headphone died. I'm so awesome
Oh,
about
I
that.
hate when that happens, man.
Yeah, but anyway, but what's that?
I said I would have thought like while you guys were up there mining that you might have seen or heard, or you know what I mean? Because it's
Oh,
such a desolate area up there, right? In the Yukon.
yeah, you have a Bigfoot right there, and you're and so I get put on an excavator and they put me out in the middle. So I'm probably like 2 miles back into the cut. And they were like, yeah, you're gonna be back here, pitch black, in the middle of nothing. And they're like, and basically how far the rock truck had to go and through how it had to go, it was 30 minutes in between people coming back to see me. You know what I mean?
Oh wow.
And, oh, it sucks so bad. And I was just out there and I'm just like, all the movies going through like Predator or like, just all these things. And I'm just like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like, I like to consider myself a little bit of, like manly, but yeah, I was just like, I sat there. I remember I was even in the excavator, and I was like, could I like? And so there's trees around, so I would like hit the tree with the excavator. I'm like, oh, I could totally kill a predator. I could totally kill, you know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, yeah, but Yeah, no, trust me. Like we looked, we tried, like, and yeah, it's no go. We didn't find anything. I wish we did
Uh,
though.
so here's when now that we're talking about like the Yukon and Alaska, right, where you guys were up gold mining and all that good stuff. What about did you ever read about or hear the Japanese pilot from the JAL Airlines? He's flying a
Yeah.
747 cargo.
Oh yeah, I know. And it was like, yeah. So he was flying, and it basically was like, hey, he radioed the towers, and he was like, "Hey, is there another airplane that is anywhere remotely near?" And they're like, "No." Like, but they saw it on radar, and it would be on their left side, on their right,
Right.
up, down, go in front, go behind. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that first object was he said was as big as his 747, and of course this is 1986. And then I think that thing like paralleled him for I think it was like 50 minutes
yeah,
before
yeah,
he saw the bigger quote mothership.
yeah.
And they I think they kind of tried to make him sound crazy because they said he was someone who had reported UFOs before, and then all of a
Oh, really?
sudden he wasn't a pilot anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I never heard about he had reported something before, but that's another thing too. Is like, especially it's not like maybe he did. You know what I mean? Like, I would love it the most is if they actually did like an anonymous type thing with all previous, past, present, and previous pilots. You know what I mean? Did I say that right? Past? No. So
Well,
past, present, and future pilots. If there was like a
right.
report, something where they could actually go and yeah, just be able to you can go back as far as we can. I mean, if there's anybody from the Korean War that's still alive or anything like that, and they can actually say like, yeah, I saw something, but I mean, I just didn't want to. Like just like what happened to you, like you didn't see anything, you saw, you know what I mean? Like otherwise, if
Right.
you have,
Well, I know that there was a thing in World War II. Both the German pilots, hang on a second, let me get the right word. I don't want anybody telling me, hey, you're an idiot.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
But don't worry,
I
they'll
forget Foo Fighters. They called them Foo Fighters.
Foo
Have you ever
Fighters.
heard of that?
No, no, I have not.
No. Okay, so Foo Fighters, I'm gonna read this word from word here, is the Foo Fighter was used by Allied aircraft pilots during World War II to describe various UFOs or mysterious aerial phenomenon seen in the skies over both the European and Pacific theaters of operation. And both the Germans and the Allies saw what they were calling Foo Fighters
Huh.
and couldn't identify them. I mean, that was a big thing in World War II with pilots. And do you hear about that now? No, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like these little things that come up that people, that some of these other groups talk about. And it's interesting how many inactive civilian UFO groups are and how many are still active and one that I'm not sure of, MUFON. You've heard of MUFON, right?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
have
and
like
I tried.
massive warehouse, like every UFO like sighting, anything like that, and the Freedom of Information Acts. They have they have their own show. Yeah, I know what you're
Yeah,
talking
have you
about.
ever tried to talk to them?
No,
Yeah, they're not that great to talk to.
no, they don't like
No,
to send information.
no, I called them about my dad's stuff, right?
Yeah,
And I got the number to quote the head of MUFON in my area,
yeah,
and she was just like, "Oh, we're not really interested." I
yeah.
mean, why are you talking to us? And I'm like, well, aren't you guys like the big thing on helping people understand different things? They're like, meh. I mean,
You
they
know,
just
you should. Have you ever thought about the Freedom of Information Act? Like so, like how they do it is that you just have key select words that you like put in for the Freedom of Information Act because otherwise, like it would just be an absolute spaghetti mess. But yeah, you should try. Like use your father's like name, use like where he might have like thing, then use your father's a friend who was you know what I mean, like, and just kind of just throw it at the wall and see what sticks and see if you get anything
right,
back. It's just like kind of like a thought of it because I would be interested. I mean, that's kind of what I mean. Like again, I don't understand if it's a kept secret. I just what I mean. Like that would be one hell of a secret.
right. And honestly, even the last time I spoke to my dad was about 3 or 4 days before he died, and
Yeah,
he would not Just
Nothing.
not at all, man. Would not. The only time he ever like told me really anything about, especially like during the Vietnam era, or really anything besides I work command post. And you know what his DD 214 said he did?
But
Said he was an air traffic controller. I was like,
oh,
shit, my dad had a problem parking the truck, let alone an airplane. You know what I mean?
bringing an aircraft with like 200 souls on board of it. Yeah, yeah. No,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So he, the only thing he ever told me was, is we were drinking a few beers one night, and it was kind of interesting. Because I had joined the service, and I think he felt more comfortable talking to me now that I was in the service. But he started talking about taking an Air America flight and kicking flares out of the back of the airplane, and he caught himself, and that was it. Conversation over.
damn. See,
That's all I
I just
got out of him, man. That's all I
just
got out of him.
and you would think like maybe even oh gosh, I would see if I was like that, if I'd done something that special. You know what I mean? Like leave like a journal. You know what I mean? So that way you could at least be like, oh no, that wasn't me. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
eh, something like to give you a little bit of an innuendo or just of what he might have done. I don't know,
Right. Yeah.
but
And yeah, I don't think, because everybody that was around him has passed now, that
yeah,
I know of, that he served with in the military. And so you're right. Maybe the Freedom of Information Act, I can
way to go, man.
grasp something.
There's some people that like I mean had like one guy, and I should really start writing these people's names down because I probably sound like an idiot names, but this guy, he's got so, and he's very, very big into ufology and whatnot. And he has unbelievable amounts of, because back in the day, you got to think to yourself, is before the internet, before anything like that, and especially these are the treasure trove years of getting the Freedom of Information Act. Is they didn't have like nowadays, like you write an email, you're not going to be sitting there like, oh, the UFO and the aliens came down and they did this, this, and this. Like you're like, you're going to use code names. You're going to be very, like sparse about
Right.
the information to not to relay to the other person so they could understand. But back then they didn't know the internet was going to happen, so they were very blunt with their words, very like things. And you got to think to yourself is it's not like they have like Costco sized warehouses for miles filled with this stuff. And, you know what I mean? And they're not going to go through everything. So that's when you're talking about freedom of information. They're not going to be able to censor everything that comes out of that. And so
Right.
yeah,
Right. So, coming up, I mean, we've got a couple of really good things planned coming up
yeah,
for Are They Out There? Obviously George, which is
yep.
going to be,
Oh,
I mean, I'm excited for George, man. I'm telling you right now.
and some
Um,
people, yeah, it's a mind provoking thought experience that you're about to have. If you guys are fortunate enough to tune in and to hear George talk about his experience and what is kind of going on in his brain, it's far fetched, but it's enough to make you think.
right. And I'll tell everybody when we have him on, just keep an open mind and just
Yeah,
take it all in. The other thing, I guess this will be on your shoulders a little bit, is Fred.
yeah, no, I can get Fred. No, 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 I can get Fred.
Yeah.
Fred's, yeah, yeah, totally.
With the paranormal.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I know.
That
It's like he is. And that's why, like I said, you got to be careful because, like I said, with UFOs, I mean, I want it to be so true that
right.
I would bypass red flags just to be able to like, okay, good. You know what I
Right.
mean? And like he's very like, but at the same point in time, like Fred, I remember this one time he was talking about like he was on Parker's Trail. So Parker Schnabel, him are in it's a Discovery show, kind of it's a spinoff of Gold Rush, and they're inside this cave. In this cave, a ton of Japanese soldiers had died in. And then I remember it was something that had happened, but Fred was trying to go to sleep, and this dude he sees this kind of shadow kind of walking, and it's basically like a silhouette is like on his tent. And then he's sitting there and he thought it was Parker getting up, and he's like, Parker, what are you doing? And he goes back and forth. He's like, Parker. And Parker's like, what? And he's like, what are you doing? He's like, nothing. I'm trying to sleep. And he's like, you're not outside your tent? He's like, no. And so Fred like opens up the tent and he's like, he looks around. He's like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, oh,
Right.
Jesus.
Right. Well,
But
Yeah, and for everybody that doesn't know, that you were on Gold Rush and you
Yeah.
were on Gold Rush with Fred,
Yep.
and we're hoping that I guess I said that I'm a Pollock, man. Fred, you and I will
Yeah.
hopefully all get together up in Washington
Yeah. Yeah.
and do a podcast on the paranormal
Oh,
uh,
easy.
while we're up there. And I plan to drive up and bring all my equipment up
Yeah.
and see what happens with Fred. And I think it'll be fun. It'd be another twist of what we're doing here on
We
that. And like you told me, Fred's big into the paranormal, right?
he like every place we go to, and I always say, I'm like, yeah, okay. But but it all comes down to two is like, some people are more in tune to that, you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, I some people have that sixth spidey sense, you know what I mean, where the hair stands up on their back of their neck and they're able to kind of like foresee things before number of times where like Fred's been able to kind of call something out prior to it coming to fruition. And so, like I said, some people just kind of have a little bit more in tune, whether it's just like the universe, the cosmic energy, the flow of the magnitude of ways that the Earth provides to us. I don't know. I
Right.
don't know how, but there's definitely some times where Fred's been able to call some dangerous situations before they happen.
Right. Well, and I got to tell you, and we're getting a little off the UFO thing, but kind of wrapping this up a little bit. But last night, though, this weekend, my girlfriend's over,
Yeah.
and we go to bed, and there's a light glowing downstairs, and we go downstairs, and it's a TV turned on by itself downstairs,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we turn that off. And then we keep hearing voices in the house,
Oh,
and
wow.
there's nobody here. It's just the two of us here. And I have huskies, but they're not howlers or anything. They'll talk when they want something, but that's it, right? And yeah, just like little weird stuff. Just and the weirdest thing of all is we're cooking dinner, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden the alarm on her phone starts going off.
So just a bunch of just like unexplainable
Yeah,
things, electronics.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and that's like a whole nother thing too, is they talked about like as far as like you go back to UFOs and whatnot. There's a hypothesis that they're just kind of jumping through interdimension. You know what I mean?
right,
Like, and so yeah, there's a whole thing that with like they think poltergeist might be just somebody who is able to jump to another dimension that we're not being able to like to see, like our
right,
eyes aren't able to see, so we can't see like IR, right, infrared. But like owls and things like that, they can. You know what I mean? Like they can see, like the owl's eyes are so intricate and so much more advanced than ours that yeah, it just kind of depends on the makeup of the animal. You know what I mean? And
right,
their evolution. Their what has made it so that they're able to survive to today. You know what I mean?
right. And with UFOs too, and Bigfoot, who's back here over the shoulder,
Yeah.
there's been a lot of speculation too that like Bigfoot could be interdimensional or is part of the
Yeah.
UFO community type thing. I mean, just so many different things that people think or could possibly be and I mean, you never know really until it happens in front of you, or
Yeah.
you catch it on tape or whatever.
I remember there's multiple times where I've talked to people, and like I said, and I'm one of those guys. Like again, I wish it was so. You know what I mean? I really, really do. Like, and I shouldn't say that. I wish we had proof of. You know what I mean? Because especially with the cameras that we have, and the drones and infrared, and all these things have been made more accessible to the general public. I mean, I wish that we could, but you never know. Like they could have died off. You know what I mean? Like back in the '80s, that could have been just kind of like the last of. You know what I mean? And
Right.
but like you said, like Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, that's a big interest of yours,
Yeah.
and yeah, they actually talked about that as far as the interdimensional portals and whatnot. Like they've got some weird, crazy things going on down there.
Right. And it's interesting, you bring up Skinwalker Ranch too, that the attorney general here in the state, Sean Reyes, has
Yeah.
actually gotten involved with
Really?
Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah, like so Brandon Fugel, he's a big real estate agent here.
Right.
And he owns Skinwalker Ranch. And he has brought Sean Reyes down to the ranch and stuff. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, why they were filming for because I think they're on Discovery too, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. But while they were filming an episode, he saw, well, now they're not UFOs or what, UAPs, but I mean they saw an unidentified flying object, and
Yeah.
Reyes is like, what the hell is in the skies of my state,
Yeah.
type thing.
Hey, you
So
know what I mean? That's the more we need. We need it to be like to the point where we're like, no, 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 no. Okay, what is this? What's going on? You know what I mean? Like, and there's other thing. There's crazy stuff. I think it's in Norway. They actually have like a ball lightning. And it's like where
right,
lightning is just a little ball that forms, in the sky. Like and they still don't really know why or how it happens, or is it like ball
right,
plasma? But you know what I mean? And so, but it happens in a certain area. And and it's not like they're able to get it on film, but they're not able to really kind of tell us why. You know what I mean?
right,
But at the same point in time, like, yeah, I think until there's a definitive cause as to why we're having some stuff that blows and that is able to do and turn and go faster than anything. I mean, there is, okay, we have military planes right now that can outfly any human. They can make turns that are so sharp and at such a degree that there is no human being on Earth that can withstand it, that won't pass out from the G force. You know what I mean? And these things are able to fly around those in circles. That's
right.
concerning. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
most definitely, especially like the some of them you see where they just all of a sudden at a right angle
yeah.
without even a stopper. I mean, it's just a bam, type
Oh, yeah.
thing.
Especially like
It's
if you
crazy.
had the like, and that would literally liquefy a person, especially with
Yeah,
how fast. Like, it would just, there's nothing that we'd be able to do. So again, yeah, like, I would love it if, like I said, they landed on the White House lawn. You know what I mean? And they were here
right.
to make our world a better place and be like, hey, like kind of get you guys' shit together. You know what I mean? But at the same point in time, man, I don't know. We'll have to see. I want it more than anything. Trust me. Like, so there's a guy
It's
that's so career that is actually coming out. I want to say it's in July. He
right.
had conference going on where he had one a number of years ago where he had a plethora of ex army intel, people that had very high status or top security clearances, name it, and they came and they had a huge news briefing and whatnot. But he is saying that he's about to do one in July, and like I said, he's going to bring up and it's something about the black budgets. He has proof, is what he's talking about, and whistleblowers that are coming forth to essentially talk about it. So
Hmm.
when that guy came out with the that just came out for saying that we had UFOs and whatnot, and the guy who's been in for 14 years and was at military intelligence, I'm just like, okay, like maybe that's the prequel, you know what I mean? Like to
Right.
everything, or maybe it's the government's way of trying to like deaden down the news conference, trying to go, oh, we already heard about that. Okay, you know what I mean? Like it could be like them just preemptively striking, being like, so it doesn't get as much of
Right.
a punch in the face. Like, wow,
Yeah. Soften the bite.
absolutely,
So all right. Well, you know what, man? I appreciate you taking the time because I know that you've got youngins and the
yeah.
family thing. My kids are all grown and gone, so I appreciate you taking time out. And we'll make sure that we announce it on TikTok and everything for when we have George on. We're going to give him a couple weeks because
Yeah,
he asked for at least a week preparation. Is going to be the way I'm going to put that.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
then, other shows, we want everybody, like I said at the beginning, to write into us. Let us
Yeah.
know what you want to see, what you'd like to see us talk about or look into and investigate. And now that it's warming up here, and we can, and hopefully we get Fred and we can all get together and maybe do some kind of little investigation with Fred, do something. I'm hoping to hear back from Skinwalker Ranch and go down there and do some filming and stuff. And we'll start sharing that on the YouTube channel and such like that. So
Talk to you about too is like, and if some people have some like, crazy encounters, like I would love it if they were able to send in their videos. We're able to kind of do like a little bit of like a dissection, yeah, kind of back check some things. But if some people got some legitimate, like stuff that they want to kind of come forward with, and they're not afraid, it would be an awesome thing for us to be able to talk with them.
right. No, absolutely. And, I just want everybody to know that anybody that sends us anything or asks us to look into it, we're definitely going to do it. Just like my friend who thought they had a Bigfoot video. And
Yeah.
honestly, when I first saw it, man, I was like, oh Lordy. But then I sent it out to the universities, did the right thing, and it turns out it wasn't.
Yep.
Disappointment, man. I would have loved to have had a Bigfoot, right? But that's what we'll do with everybody. We treat everything the same. Anything that sends anything into us, we're going to definitely look and
Yeah.
not just jump right into it and say, "Hey, oh my God, this happened."
Yeah.
So just for people to be aware of that, we will check in and have people look at it for us because we're not experts, but we'll ask experts to do that
Yeah,
for us.
absolutely.
So
So I appreciate your time as well, man. Like I know that time is precious, and yeah, I enjoy every single time that we're able to get together and talk about this.
yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to more. And I think, as we keep going, we do a lot with veterans, and I know that our podcast has all been veterans so far, and we'll branch out past veterans, but we are veterans for veterans,
Yeah,
and it's a brotherhood.
yeah,
So, I encourage any veterans that's had any type of experience to get a hold of us as well on
yeah. No,
this and let us know.
I just trust me. I want to hear about it. If you got anything, I want to see it. You know what I mean? And yeah, it would just be, it's an amazing experience, especially like, just being able to kind of share that details. And you'd be surprised, like I said, how many people out there just want to hear an amazing story and kind of, like sit there and it's fun. It's fun to kind of dissect it, take it, talk about it and try and figure it out.
Right. Absolutely. So remember, people, email, are they out there? The number one at gmail.com. Give us your stories, and we look forward to it. And just keep in mind, man, are they out there?